I'm Cassandra Mitchell, 28, and 3 months ago I was thrown out of my childhood home by my own mother for my perfect sister Valerie. I never expected that my leaving would cause their carefully constructed house of lies to collapse. The family that chose her over me is now desperately calling, begging me to come back. They don't know that I've discovered the truth about why Valerie really came home. And I'm about to turn their world upside down. Hey everyone, before I dive into this absolute roller coaster of family drama, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. If you're into family revenge stories like mine, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Trust me, by the end of this story, you'll understand why sometimes karma comes back around in the most unexpected ways. Now let's get into how my so-called family betrayed me and what happened next. Growing up in suburban Boston, I always knew I was second best in our family dynamic. My sister Valerie was the golden child, the straight-A student homecoming queen, and eventually the successful marketing executive in New York. Meanwhile, I was the reliable daughter who stayed local, becoming a pediatric nurse and helping care for my aging parents. I never resented my choice to stay close to home. I genuinely loved my work and believed family should stick together through thick and thin. Mom and Dad never explicitly said they preferred Valerie, but the evidence was everywhere. Her achievements displayed prominently in the living room, the way conversations lit up when she called how my parents would reschedule their own doctor appointments if Valerie could manage a quick visit home. I had long ago accepted my place in the family hierarchy and made peace with it, or so I thought. The dynamics shifted dramatically on that rainy Tuesday in April when Valerie's sleek black Audi pulled into our parents' driveway unannounced. I had stopped by after my hospital shift to drop off some groceries for Mom, who was recovering from minor knee surgery. Dad was at his weekly golf game, so it was just Mom and me sorting through coupons at the kitchen table when we heard the car door slam. Did Dad forget something? Mom wondered, peering through the window. Her face transformed instantly from casual curiosity to ecstatic joy. Oh my God, it's Val. The front door flew open before Valerie could even knock. There stood my 5-year-old sister, usually polished and put together, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her normally perfect blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her eyes were rimmed with red. Something was clearly wrong, but Mom didn't seem to notice or care. "My beautiful girl," Mom exclaimed, embracing Valerie as if she'd returned from war rather than her luxury Manhattan apartment. What a wonderful surprise. Valerie hugged our mother back with unusual intensity. When they finally separated, I noticed the Louis Vuitton luggage behind her, not an overnight bag but 2 large suitcases. "Hi Cass," Valerie said finally, acknowledging my presence with a weak smile. There was something in her eyes I couldn't quite read. Guilt, fear, whatever it was, it made me uneasy. "What's going on, Val?" I asked directly. "You okay?" Before Valerie could answer, Mom jumped in. "Don't interrogate your sister the second she walks through the door. Can't she visit without the 3rd degree?" I raised my hands in surrender. "Just asking. Most people don't show up with 2 suitcases for a casual drop-by." Mom shot me a warning look before turning back to Valerie with concerned eyes. "Sweetheart, is everything all right? Is it work? Or," she lowered her voice dramatically, "is it Richard?" Richard was Valerie's boyfriend of 3 years, a hedge fund manager with perfect teeth and the personality of expensive wallpaper. I'd only met him twice, and both times he'd spent more time checking his phone than engaging with our family. "It's complicated," Valerie replied, her voice breaking slightly. "I just need some family support right now. Is it okay if I stay here for a while?" "Of course it is," Mom declared without hesitation. "Your room is exactly as you left it. Stay as long as you need." I noticed Valerie's eyes darting nervously around the house, as if searching for something or someone. "Is Dad home?" "He's at golf," Mom explained. "He'll be thrilled to see you when he gets back. Let's get you settled." As Mom fussed over Valerie helping with her bags and offering to make her favorite meal, I stood awkwardly in the background. Something about this sudden appearance felt off. Valerie had always been meticulously organized. Spontaneity wasn't in her nature. And she'd never run home during a crisis before. Her usual approach was to handle problems privately and then present the resolved situation to the family later. Over dinner that night, Valerie offered vague explanations about needing a break and reassessing her priorities. Dad, who had indeed been thrilled to see his favorite daughter, didn't press for details. Neither did Mom. I, however, couldn't stop wondering what had really driven my successful sister back to our childhood home. In the days that followed, Valerie's behavior became increasingly strange. She jumped whenever the doorbell rang. She kept her phone on silent and would take calls in whispered tones from the backyard. She asked me peculiar questions about patient confidentiality at the hospital where I worked. Most tellingly, she was unusually nice to me, offering to help with chores, asking about my day, even complimenting my work as a nurse, something she'd always subtly dismissed as less impressive than her corporate career. A week after Valerie's arrival, I was folding laundry in the living room when I overheard her on the phone in the kitchen, her voice tense and low. "You need to give me more time," she was saying. "No, they don't know. I can't just..." She paused, listening to whoever was on the other end. "Fine. 2 weeks, but I need absolute discretion. If this gets out, everything is ruined." She ended the call abruptly when she heard me approaching. Her attempt at a casual smile didn't reach her eyes. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just work stuff," she replied, too quickly. "They're lost without me." I nodded, pretending to believe her. But that night I couldn't sleep. The pieces weren't fitting together, and my nurse's intuition, honed by years of spotting when patients weren't telling the whole truth about their symptoms, was screaming that something was seriously wrong. The next morning I decided to do something I'd never done before. I looked through Valerie's things while she was out for a run. I knew it was an invasion of privacy, but my concern outweighed my guilt. In her purse, tucked into a side pocket, I found a crumpled prescription slip with her name on it. The medication listed was one I recognized immediately from my work. It was commonly prescribed to pregnant women with certain complications. My hand trembled as I carefully returned the prescription to its hiding place. Valerie was pregnant, and apparently experiencing complications. Why wouldn't she tell the family? We might have our issues, but no one would judge her for this. Unless the baby wasn't Richard's. The thought hit me like a thunderbolt. It would explain the secrecy, the sudden departure from New York, the furtive phone calls. But I needed more information before jumping to conclusions. Little did I know, my discovery was just the tip of the iceberg. The real bombshell was yet to come, and it would shatter our family in ways none of us could have imagined. Over the next few days, I observed Valerie with new eyes. The subtle signs I might have otherwise missed now screamed for attention: the way she avoided alcohol at dinner, her frequent bathroom breaks in the mornings, how she unconsciously rested her hand on her stomach when she thought no one was looking. My medical training confirmed what the prescription had suggested. My sister was definitely pregnant. I debated confronting her directly, but decided against it. If Valerie wanted privacy, she must have her reasons. Instead, I made small gestures, offering her ginger tea when she looked nauseous, suggesting we watch movies instead of going out when she seemed tired. Small kindnesses that could be interpreted as ordinary sisterly behavior. One evening, 2 weeks after Valerie's arrival, Dad announced at dinner that he had invited Richard to visit that weekend. "I called him yesterday," Dad said proudly, as if he'd accomplished something remarkable. "Poor guy sounded lost without you, Val. Said he's been swamped with work but can drive up Saturday morning." The color drained from Valerie's face. "You did what?" Her voice was barely audible. "Invited your boyfriend," Dad repeated, looking confused by her reaction. "I thought you'd be pleased." Valerie's fork clattered against her plate. I specifically told you I needed space from everything in New York. That includes Richard. Mom reached across the table to pat Valerie's hand. Sweetheart, he's worried about you. He says you've barely been answering his texts. That's not like you. Maybe there's a reason for that, I suggested quietly, earning sharp looks from both my parents. Stay out of this, Cassandra, Mom snapped. This is between Valerie and Richard. I bit my tongue, but continued watching as Valerie's composure cracked further. I can't see him right now, she insisted, her voice rising. Call him back and tell him not to come. Dad's brow furrowed in rare disapproval. Val, that's not how we treat people we love. Whatever's going on, you two can work it out. That's what commitment means. You don't understand, Valerie said, pushing away from the table. None of you understand anything, she stormed upstairs, leaving an uncomfortable silence in her wake. Mom immediately blamed me. Why did you have to antagonize her, she demanded. She's obviously going through something difficult. I barely said anything, I defended myself. And yes, she is going through something difficult, but pretending everything's fine isn't helping. Dad sighed heavily. Your sister and Richard will sort things out. They always do. She's probably just stressed from work. I stared at my parents in disbelief. Their ability to rationalize Valerie's behavior was truly remarkable. Even now, they couldn't or wouldn't see that their perfect daughter was in serious trouble. Later that night, I knocked on Valerie's bedroom door. After a long pause, she called for me to enter. She was sitting cross-legged on her bed, surrounded by tissues, her laptop open beside her. You okay? I asked, though the answer was obvious. Valerie laughed bitterly. Not even close. I closed the door behind me and sat on the edge of her bed. Val, I'm a nurse. I've seen the signs. And I found your prescription. I admitted the last part quickly, like ripping off a bandage. Her head snapped up, eyes wide with panic. You went through my things. I was worried about you, I said, not backing down. Are you having complications with the pregnancy? For a moment, I thought she might deny it. Instead, her shoulders slumped in defeat. The baby's fine. It's everything else that's a disaster. Does Richard know? Valerie's laugh was hollow. Richard isn't the father. Even though I'd suspected as much, hearing the confirmation still shocked me. Valerie had always been the responsible one, the planner, the perfect daughter who never made mistakes, at least not publicly. Who then? I asked gently. She shook her head. It doesn't matter. He's married. It was a mistake, a stupid mistake that happened more than once. She looked up at me, her eyes swimming with tears. I've ruined everything, Cass. My relationship, probably my career. Everything. I moved closer and put my arm around her shoulders. Hey, you haven't ruined everything. You're having a baby. That's a big deal, but it's not the end of the world. You don't understand, she insisted. There's more to it than that. The father. He's not just anybody. He's... Before she could finish, her phone buzzed with an incoming call. She glanced at the screen and immediately declined it. Richard again, I guessed. No. Her voice was tight. It's him. The father. He won't stop calling. Is he pressuring you? About the baby, Valerie wiped her eyes. Not exactly. He wants me to handle it quietly. Says he'll pay for everything, set me up somewhere, until it's over. But I don't want that. You want to keep the baby, I realized. She nodded. Is that crazy? My whole life is in shambles, and all I can think about is that I want this child. I didn't think I wanted kids, at least not yet, but now I can't imagine any other choice. I squeezed her shoulder. That's not crazy. That's being human. For the first time in perhaps our entire adult lives, Valerie looked at me with genuine respect. How are you so together, Cass? You've always been the steady one. I've been pretending my whole life, and you've been quietly figuring it all out. The compliment caught me off guard. Trust me, I don't have anything figured out. I just take one day at a time. We talked for hours that night, more openly than we ever had before. Valerie didn't reveal the father's identity, but she shared her fears about single motherhood, her guilt about cheating on Richard, and her anxiety about our parents' reaction to her fall from grace. "They'll still love you," I assured her. "You're their favorite, remember?" She winced. "I'm sorry about that. I've always known they treated us differently. I should have said something." I shrugged, though her acknowledgement meant more than I let on. Water under the bridge. As I was leaving her room, Valerie called after me. "Cass, please don't tell Mom and Dad about the baby. Not yet. I need to do it in my own way. Your secret's safe with me," I promised. "But Val, you can't hide it forever, especially not if Richard's coming this weekend." Her expression darkened. "I'll handle Richard. Somehow." The ominous tone in her voice should have warned me that Valerie's plan for handling Richard and the fallout from her affair would have devastating consequences for all of us, especially me. The day Richard was due to arrive dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within our household. Valerie had been tense all morning, checking her phone obsessively and jumping at every sound. I tried to offer moral support, but she rebuffed my attempts with increasing irritability. "I don't need a babysitter, Cassandra," she snapped, when I suggested we prepare a response to Richard together. "I've handled bigger crises than this at work." I backed off, hurt but not surprised. The brief window of vulnerability Valerie had shown me was clearly closing. She was retreating behind her perfect facade, the one our parents had helped craft and maintain her entire life. Richard arrived promptly at 11, his silver BMW pulling into the driveway with military precision. I watched from the kitchen window as he emerged, looking every bit the successful New York professional in his casual weekend attire that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He carried flowers, roses predictably, and wore the confident expression of a man who had never been denied anything he truly wanted. Mom rushed to greet him with the enthusiasm usually reserved for visiting dignitaries. Dad clapped him on the shoulder and helped with his overnight bag. I stayed in the kitchen, giving Valerie space to handle the reunion her way. But when 10 minutes passed and she hadn't come downstairs, Mom sent me to fetch her. I found my sister in the bathroom splashing cold water on her face. "He's here," I said unnecessarily. Valerie nodded, her expression unreadable. "I know. Do you want me to tell them you need a minute?" "No," she straightened her shoulders. "I've got this." I followed her downstairs where Richard was chatting amicably with our parents in the living room. When he saw Valerie, he stood immediately, his face lighting up with what seemed like genuine relief. "Val," he breathed, stepping forward to embrace her. I noticed she kept the hug brief and stepped back quickly. If Richard noticed her reticence, he didn't show it. "You look," he started, then paused, studying her. "Different." An awkward silence fell. Mom jumped in with offers of refreshments, and soon we were all seated with lemonade, making painful small talk about the weather, Richard's drive up from New York, and Dad's latest golf score. Throughout the conversation, Richard kept glancing at Valerie with confusion and concern. So he finally said during a lull, "Are we going to talk about what's going on, why you left like that, why you've barely been answering my calls?" Mom immediately rose. "We should give you two some privacy." "No," Valerie interrupted firmly. "Stay, all of you." Her gaze flickered to me briefly and I saw fear there, but also determination. "There's something I need to tell everyone." Dad shifted uncomfortably. "Sweetheart, if this is between you and Richard, it's not just between us," Valerie cut him off. "It affects all of us." My heart pounded. Was she really going to announce her pregnancy now, with all of us watching? It seemed uncharacteristically dramatic for my usually private sister. Richard looked increasingly bewildered. "Val, what's this about? Is it work? Are you being transferred because we can make long-distance work if I'm pregnant?" Valerie stated bluntly. The room went deadly silent. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad froze with his lemonade glass halfway to his lips. Richard's expression cycled rapidly, from shock to joy to confusion. Pregnant, he repeated. But that's wonderful, unexpected, sure, but we've talked about kids eventually, and it's not yours. Valerie interrupted, her voice flat. Another heavier silence descended. Richard's face drained of color. What did you say? He asked, so quietly I could barely hear him. Valerie looked him directly in the eyes. The baby isn't yours. I'm sorry. Richard set down his glass with deliberate care. Whose is it? Valerie glanced at our parents, then at me before answering. That's not important right now. Not important, Richard's voice rose sharply. You cheat on me, get pregnant by another man, disappear without explanation, and now you're saying his identity isn't important. Mom was crying silently now. Dad looked shell-shocked. I sat frozen, unsure whether to intervene or stay quiet. I never meant to hurt you, Valerie said, though her tone lacked the remorse her words suggested. It just happened. Richard laughed bitterly. Things like this don't just happen, Valerie. There are choices involved, choices you made. He stood abruptly, pacing the living room. Who is he? Someone from work, a client, a random guy from a bar? With each suggestion, his voice grew louder. That's enough, Dad finally interjected. I understand you're upset, Richard, but let's keep this civil. Richard rounded on him. Civil? Your daughter cheats on me, gets pregnant, and I'm supposed to be civil. He turned back to Valerie. Tell me who he is. Valerie's eyes darted nervously around the room before landing on me. Something in her expression made my blood run cold. It was Jason, she said quietly. The name hung in the air for a moment before recognition dawned. Jason Parker. My boyfriend of 2 years. What? The word escaped me in a shocked whisper. Valerie wouldn't meet my eyes now. I'm sorry, Cass. It just happened. We didn't mean to. Stop saying that. I stood up, my entire body shaking. Things don't just happen. Jason and I have been together for years. When did you even? How could you? Last New Year's, she admitted. When I came home for the holiday. And then again when I visited in February. My mind reeled, trying to process this new betrayal. Jason had been working on New Year's Eve, or so he'd told me. And in February, he'd claimed to be at a conference during the weekend Valerie visited. I don't believe you, I said, though a sickening certainty was already settling in my stomach. Jason wouldn't check his messages, Valerie suggested, her composure returning, now that the focus had shifted away from her deception of Richard. I'm sure you'll find our conversations. Richard had gone very still. So not only did you cheat, but you did it with your sister's boyfriend. That's beyond comprehension, Valerie. Mom finally found her voice. There must be some explanation. Some misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, Valerie insisted. I'm pregnant with Jason's baby. That's why I came home, to figure things out before telling everyone. I felt physically ill. The room was spinning around me. Without another word, I grabbed my purse and car keys and headed for the door. Cassandra, wait, Mom called after me. We need to talk about this as a family. Family, I laughed harshly, turning back to face them. Is that what we are? I walked out, slamming the door behind me, with no idea that this betrayal was only the beginning of a much larger deception that would eventually tear our entire family apart. I drove aimlessly for hours, my mind replaying Valerie's bombshell on a torturous loop. Jason and Valerie. Valerie and Jason. My sister and my boyfriend. The two people I trusted most in the world had betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. Eventually, I found myself parked outside Jason's apartment building. He was a resident at the same hospital where I worked as a nurse, though we were assigned to different departments. We had met during an emergency code when a patient crashed in the pediatric ward where I worked. Jason had been the resident on call, and his calm efficiency during the crisis had impressed me. Our relationship had developed slowly after that coffee in the hospital cafeteria, casual dinners after shifts, and eventually a committed relationship that I thought was heading somewhere serious. Now I sat in my car staring at his windows, wondering if he was home, if he knew about Valerie's announcement, if he was waiting for the fallout. My phone had been buzzing non-stop with calls and texts from my parents, but nothing from Jason, which told me everything I needed to know. After 30 minutes of gathering my courage, I finally got out of the car and marched up to his building. I still had a key, and part of me wanted to use it to catch him unaware to see his face when he realized he'd been exposed. But another stronger part of me refused to enter his space like I belonged there. Not anymore. So I rang the doorbell and waited, heart hammering against my ribs. When Jason opened the door, he looked exhausted and unsurprised to see me. His dark hair was disheveled and his usually alert brown eyes were bloodshot. He wordlessly stepped aside to let me in. "So you've heard," I said flatly, walking past him into the apartment we'd spent countless evenings in together. "Valerie called me an hour ago," he confirmed, closing the door. "Cassandra, I cut him off, raising a hand. "Don't say you're sorry. Don't say it was a mistake. Don't feed me the same lines Valerie used." Jason sank onto his couch, head in his hands. "What do you want me to say then?" "The truth," I demanded. "Was it really just those 2 times, New Year's and February?" He nodded miserably. "And the baby is definitely yours." Another nod. I paced his living room, the familiar space, now feeling alien and hostile. "Were you ever going to tell me, or were you just going to keep pretending everything was fine between us while my sister carried your child?" "I didn't know about the baby until 2 weeks ago," Jason said quietly. "When Valerie told me I was shocked. I told her we had to come clean to you, but she wanted to wait. Said she needed time to figure things out." "Figure what out exactly? Whether to keep ruining my life or take a break from it?" Jason finally looked up at me. "She was considering termination at first. But then she decided she wants to keep it. That's when she went to your parents' house." Something about his phrasing struck me as odd. "My parents' house, not your parents' house." "What you said, she went to my parents' house, not our parents' house, as if they're just my parents, not hers too." Jason looked momentarily confused, then shook his head. "Just a figure of speech. I'm not thinking clearly." I narrowed my eyes, studying him. "There's something you're not telling me. Cass, I've cheated on you with your sister. She's pregnant with my child." What more terrible truth could there possibly be? But my nurse's instinct, the same one that had told me something was wrong with Valerie's story, was screaming at me now. Why her, Jason, of all people? Why my sister? He looked away. If you say, it just happened, I will throw that lamp at your head," I warned, pointing at a nearby end table. Jason sighed deeply. "We were drunk on New Year's. You were working overnight. Valerie was upset about something. She kept saying things about your family, about how you didn't know the truth." My blood ran cold. "What truth? I don't know," Jason insisted. "She never elaborated. I thought it was just drunk talk, but then in February when she visited again, she called me. Said she needed to talk." One thing led to another. He trailed off, his expression haunted. "I've hated myself every day since then, Cass. You have to believe that." "I don't have to believe anything you say ever again," I replied coldly. But my mind was racing. What truth about my family had Valerie been referring to? I pulled out my phone. "What are you doing?" Jason asked. "Checking your story." I dialed Valerie's number, putting it on speaker so Jason could hear. To my surprise, she answered on the second ring. "Cass, thank God. Where are you? Mom and Dad are freaking out." "I'm with Jason," I interrupted. "He says you've known about the pregnancy for 2 weeks. That you were considering termination. Is that true?" There was a brief pause. "Yes," Valerie finally admitted. "I found out about 3 weeks ago." "And what's this truth about our family that you mentioned to Jason on New Year's Eve?" "The thing I supposedly don't know." The silence that followed was longer this time. When Valerie spoke again, her voice was cautious. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, Val." Not anymore. Jason says you were upset talking about some family truth I didn't know. What was it? Jason's mistaken, Valerie said firmly. I was drunk. I probably said a lot of things that didn't make sense. I looked at Jason, who was frowning in confusion. She definitely said something about a family secret, he insisted. It seemed important at the time. Look, Valerie's voice took on an edge of irritation. I really don't know what you're talking about. We have bigger issues to deal with right now. Mom's hysterical, Dad's not speaking to me, and Richard stormed out. Can you please come back so we can figure this out? Her deflection only strengthened my suspicion. Not until you tell me what you meant. There's nothing to tell, Valerie exclaimed, frustration evident. Jason's confused. Or making things up to distract from what he did. Jason shook his head vigorously. I'm not making it up. You specifically said Cassandra didn't know the truth about her family. Those were your exact words. Another long pause. Fine, Valerie finally said, her voice tight. If you must know, I was referring to the fact that Mom and Dad have always favored me over you. I felt guilty about it, that's all. It was a plausible explanation, but something about her tone didn't ring true. That's not some big secret, Val. I've always known they favored you. Well, I was drunk and emotional. Can we please focus on the actual crisis here? I stared at Jason, who looked as unconvinced as I felt. I'll be back when I'm ready, I told Valerie. Not before. I hung up before she could respond. She's lying, Jason said immediately. That wasn't what she was talking about. For once, we were in perfect agreement. No, it wasn't. But why lie about it now? Maybe because I'm here. Maybe it's something she doesn't want me to know. I considered this. You think it's something about you, Jason shrugged helplessly. I have no idea. But whatever it is, it seemed to really upset her that night. I stood up, suddenly determined. I need to go back to my apartment and think. This is too much to process all at once. What about us? Jason asked quietly. I looked at him incredulously. There is no us anymore, Jason. You slept with my sister. She's having your baby. We're done. He nodded, accepting this without argument. For what it's worth, I did love you, Cass. I still do. It's worth nothing, I replied coldly. At the door, I turned back one last time. If you remember anything else Valerie said that night, anything at all about this truth, call me. As I drove back to my apartment, my mind was racing. The betrayal by Jason and Valerie was devastating, but now I was equally disturbed by the mystery Valerie was clearly trying to hide. What secret about our family could be so significant that she'd mention it during a drunken night yet refuse to acknowledge it now? I had a feeling that whatever it was, it might change everything, not just for me, but for our entire family. Hey everyone, if you're still with me through this crazy family drama, I really appreciate you. This story isn't easy to tell, but sharing it with you all somehow makes it easier to process. If you're enjoying it so far, please hit that like button to let me know. It really helps me keep going. And if you have any guesses about what family secret Valerie might be hiding, drop them in the comments below. I'm about to share what happens next, and trust me, things are about to get even more intense. Back at my apartment, I felt numb. The events of the day had left me emotionally drained, yet my mind wouldn't stop racing. I kept circling back to Valerie's mysterious comment about a family truth, and her obvious reluctance to explain it. Whatever this secret was, it clearly went beyond the already devastating revelation about her and Jason. I ignored the persistent calls and texts from my parents. Their messages ranged from concerned to demanding, but I couldn't deal with them yet. Not until I had a clearer picture of what was really going on. Instead, I called the one person who might have insight, my grandmother, Nana Beth. My mother's mother had always been somewhat of an outsider in our family dynamic. She lived in Florida and visited infrequently, but she had a sharp mind and an even sharper tongue. If anyone would tell me the unvarnished truth, it would be her. Cassandra, Nana Beth answered, sounding surprised. Is everything okay? You never call this late. I glanced at the clock, realizing it was past 10. Sorry, Nana, I didn't realize the time. Never mind that. What's wrong? You sound terrible. I hesitated, unsure how to explain. It's complicated. Valerie came home a few weeks ago. She's pregnant. Ah, Nana said, not sounding particularly shocked. And I'm guessing not by that stiff fellow she's been dating. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Nana had met Richard once and had immediately declared him as exciting as unseasoned chicken. No, not by Richard, I confirmed. By Jason. My boyfriend. That earned a sharp intake of breath. Oh, Cassandra, I'm so sorry. Thanks, I said quietly. But that's not why I'm calling. Nana, is there something about our family, about me specifically, that I don't know? Some secret Valerie might be aware of? The silence that followed was so long I thought the call had dropped. Nana, are you there? I'm here, she finally replied, her voice oddly subdued. What makes you ask about family secrets, Cassandra? I explained about Valerie's drunken comment to Jason and her subsequent denial. She's hiding something, Nana. Something important. Another pause, this one weighted with what felt like decades of unspoken history. It's not my place to tell you this, Nana finally said. Your parents should have done it years ago. My heart began pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Tell me what, Cassandra dear. Nana's voice was gentle but firm. Valerie isn't your full sister. You're half-siblings, different fathers. The room seemed to tilt around me. What? That can't be right. Dad Martin is Valerie's biological father, Nana confirmed. But not yours. Your father was a man named Daniel Reynolds. He and your mother had a brief relationship when she and Martin were separated. When your mother discovered she was pregnant with you, she and Martin had already reconciled. He agreed to raise you as his own. I sank onto my couch trying to process this bombshell. Does Valerie know this? Yes, Nana sighed. She overheard your parents arguing about it when she was 16. You would have been 9. Your mother confirmed it when Valerie confronted her, but swore her to secrecy. They never told you because Martin insisted on being recognized as your father in every way. He was afraid you'd feel different, I laughed bitterly. I've felt different my entire life. I've never understood why they favored Valerie so obviously. Why nothing I did was ever quite good enough. And now you're telling me it's because I'm not really his daughter? Martin loves you, Cassandra, Nana insisted, in his own flawed way. But yes, I've always believed their treatment of you was influenced by this secret. It's why I've been so critical of your mother over the years. I thought she should have told you the truth long ago. My mind was racing, connecting dots that had never made sense before. Why I looked so different from Valerie and Dad, with my dark hair and olive complexion contrasting with their fair features. Why Dad had always been more emotionally distant with me. Why accomplishments that would have earned Valerie lavish praise only got me a perfunctory nod. Do you know anything about him, my biological father? I asked, still struggling to absorb the reality of the situation. Not much, Nana admitted. He was a doctor, a surgeon, I believe. He moved to the West Coast before you were born. Your mother said he never knew about you. A surgeon. Perhaps that explained my draw to medicine, to healing. It was one small piece of information to cling to in the sea of uncertainty that had suddenly become my life. Thank you for telling me, Nana, I said quietly. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, she replied. I fought with your mother about this for years. But she and Martin were adamant they thought they were protecting you. After hanging up, I sat motionless, staring at nothing as the pieces of my life rearranged themselves into a new painful pattern. Everything I thought I knew about myself, about my family, had been built on a foundation of lies. And Valerie had known. For years she had known we were half-siblings while watching our parents favor her. She had known when she slept with my boyfriend. She had known while pregnant with his child, a man who had been mine. With sudden clarity, I understood what I needed to do next. The next morning, I drove back to my parents' house with a strange sense of calm. The shock and betrayal had crystallized into a cold determination overnight. I needed answers, and I wasn't leaving until I got them. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Richard's BMW was gone, but all the family vehicles were present. Good. I wanted everyone involved to face this together. Mom opened the door before I could knock her face tight with worry. Cassandra, thank God. We've been so worried. Where have you been? I walked past her without answering, heading directly for the living room, where, as expected, Dad and Valerie were sitting in uncomfortable silence. They both looked up when I entered, Dad with relief, Valerie with apprehension. Cassandra, Dad started, but I held up my hand to silence him. I spoke with Nana Beth last night, I announced, without preamble. The color drained from Mom's face as she followed me into the room. What did she tell you? She asked, though her expression made it clear she already knew. The truth, I replied simply. That Dad is Valerie's father but not mine. That my biological father is some surgeon named Daniel Reynolds, who never even knew I existed. That you've been lying to me my entire life. Dad stood abruptly, his face ashen. Cassandra, you have to understand what I demanded, my calm facade cracking. That you've treated me like a second-class member of this family because I don't share your DNA. That you favored Valerie in every possible way because she's your real daughter. It wasn't like that, Mom protested weakly. Wasn't it? I turned to her. You've spent my entire life compensating for your guilt, by letting me take care of you, by relying on me to stay close to home, by using my loyalty while giving nothing back. All while Valerie got to be the golden child who could do no wrong. That's not fair, Dad insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. I laughed bitterly. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Was it fair to keep me in the dark about my own identity? Was it fair to make Valerie carry this secret? At the mention of her name, all eyes turned to my sister, half-sister, who had remained uncharacteristically silent. She looked smaller somehow, curled into the corner of the sofa. You knew, I addressed her directly. You knew we were only half-siblings when you slept with Jason. Valerie flinched. It wasn't like that. It doesn't change the fact that what I did was wrong. Actually, it changes everything, I countered. Because now I understand why you did it. It wasn't just a drunken mistake or momentary weakness. It was years of resentment, wasn't it? Years of watching me struggle to earn the love that came so easily to you, knowing all along that there was a reason I was treated differently. Tears welled in Valerie's eyes. I didn't sleep with Jason to hurt you, didn't you? You've had everything handed to you your entire life. The one thing that was mine, just mine, was my relationship with Jason, and you took that too. Mom stepped between us. This isn't productive. We need to focus on what happens now. Valerie is pregnant. That's the immediate issue. No, I said firmly. The immediate issue is the decades of lies. The immediate issue is that I don't even know who I am anymore. You're our daughter, Dad said, an edge of desperation in his voice. Regardless of biology. I've raised you, loved me less, I finished for him. Don't deny it. We all know it's true. He didn't contradict me, which was perhaps the most honest thing he'd done in years. I turned back to Valerie. Tell me something. That night with Jason, what exactly did you say about me not knowing the truth about our family? Valerie looked trapped. I was upset. I'd had a fight with Richard earlier that day. He'd been pressuring me about marriage, kids. I was drunk and feeling guilty about keeping such a huge secret from you all these years. I might have said something like, she doesn't even know we're not real sisters. And Jason, he asked what I meant, but I realized I'd said too much and changed the subject. I don't think he connected it to anything important. We were both pretty intoxicated. I nodded, pieces falling into place. And in February, what happened then? Valerie looked down. I called him to make sure he hadn't told you anything about my slip-up. one thing led to another. And now you're pregnant, I finished. Yes. With my boyfriend's baby. Ex-boyfriend now, I assume. Mom interjected awkwardly. I ignored her, keeping my focus on Valerie. Does the baby's father know yet you're married lover? Confusion flickered across everyone's faces. Married lover, Dad repeated. What are you talking about? I frowned suddenly, unsure. Valerie told me the baby's father is married. That's why she couldn't tell anyone who he is. All eyes turned to Valerie, who had gone very still. Valerie, Mom prompted. What is Cassandra talking about? My half-sister looked cornered. I may have told Cassandra the baby's father was married to protect Jason. Protect him from what I demanded. From Dad, she admitted. I was afraid of how he'd react if he knew Jason was the father. Dad's face darkened. Are you saying Jason is the father? Yes, Valerie whispered. A heavy silence fell over the room. I studied Valerie closely, remembering all the inconsistencies in her story, all the secretive phone calls, all the times her explanation hadn't quite added up. You're lying, I said, suddenly, certainty flooding through me. Jason isn't the father, is he? Valerie's head snapped up, eyes wide with panic. Of course he is. I told you. No, I interrupted. You told me a lot of things. You said you were having complications but later admitted the baby is fine. You said the father is married and wants you to handle it quietly, but now you're claiming it's Jason who's single and told me he wants you to keep it. Your story keeps changing. Mom looked between us, confusion evident on her face. Valerie, what is going on? Valerie's composure was crumbling. Nothing. Cassandra's just upset and trying to cause problems. I called Jason before coming here. I interrupted a bluff I hoped would pay off. He told me everything. It was a shot in the dark, but Valerie's reaction, the complete draining of color from her face, told me I'd hit close to the mark. What did he tell you? She asked, her voice barely audible. Enough, I replied vaguely. Why don't you tell Mom and Dad who the baby's father really is? Valerie looked trapped, her eyes darting between our parents and me. The walls were closing in on her carefully constructed narrative and we all knew it. That's when she broke. Fine, Valerie whispered, tears streaming down her face. Jason isn't the father. Mom gasped. Dad sank back into his chair. I stood my ground waiting. Then who is? Mom demanded. Valerie took a deep, shuddering breath. It's Richard. Of all the possibilities I had considered, this wasn't one of them. Richard, I repeated incredulously. Your boyfriend Richard, the one who was here yesterday thinking you'd cheated on him. Valerie nodded miserably. We've been having problems for months. He's been pushing for marriage, but I wasn't ready. When I found out I was pregnant, I panicked. I knew he'd insist on getting married right away and I couldn't face it. So you fabricated this entire story? Dad asked, his voice rising in disbelief. You let us believe you'd been unfaithful. You accused Jason of being the father. I never actually told Jason he was the father, Valerie clarified quickly. He assumed it from what I said. I just didn't correct him. I stared at her, stunned by the depths of her deception. But you did sleep with Jason on New Year's, and in February, she nodded reluctantly. Yes. That part was true. But the timing doesn't work for the pregnancy. I'm only 10 weeks along. That's why I said it happened with someone else. Why involve Jason at all? Mom asked, clearly struggling to keep up. Why not just say it was some anonymous person? Because I needed someone specific to blame, Valerie admitted, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Someone who would be complicated enough to explain why I was so upset, why I needed to come home, and she glanced at me guiltily, someone Cassandra would never want to reconcile with. The room went deadly silent as the implications of her statement sank in. You deliberately tried to destroy my relationship, I said slowly, the full extent of her betrayal becoming clear. You slept with my boyfriend, then used that to create a cover story that would ensure I'd never forgive him, all to hide the fact that you're pregnant with your own boyfriend's baby. I was scared, Valerie said, as if that explained everything. Richard would have insisted on marriage. He's so traditional, so concerned with appearances. I wasn't ready. So instead, you destroyed multiple relationships and lied to everyone who cares about you. Dad's voice was uncharacteristically harsh. Valerie flinched. I was going to tell Richard the truth eventually. Just after I'd figured things out. And Jason, I pressed. What about him? He thinks he's going to be a father. I was going to tell him too, she insisted weakly. Once things calmed down. I shook my head in disgust. This is a new low even for you. What about the married man? Mom asked, still piecing it all together. You told Cassandra the father was married. Another lie, Valerie admitted. I needed her to believe it wasn't Jason, but I couldn't tell her it was Richard either. Not after the scene we staged. The calculation behind it all was breathtaking. While I'd been reeling from the discovery that my boyfriend had cheated with my sister, Valerie had been orchestrating an elaborate deception to protect herself from commitment. Does Richard know any of this? Dad asked, his face grim. Valerie shook her head. No. He thinks I cheated on him. That's why he left so angry yesterday. Dad stood abruptly. You need to call him right now. Tell him the truth. I can't, Valerie protested. He'll never forgive me for lying. That's a consequence you'll have to face. Dad interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. You've manipulated and hurt enough people. It ends now. I watched this exchange with a strange detachment. After years of seeing Dad defer to Valerie's every wish, it was almost shocking to see him stand firm against her. And after you've called Richard, I added quietly, you need to call Jason. He deserves to know he's not going to be a father. Valerie looked between us, seemingly realizing for the first time that she'd lost control of the situation. What if I don't want to be with Richard? What if I don't want to marry him just because I'm pregnant? That's a separate issue, Mom said firmly. You need to be honest with him about the baby. What happens after that is between you two. And what about us? I asked, looking directly at my parents. What about the lie you've been telling me my entire life? Mom and Dad exchanged uncomfortable glances. We should have told you long ago, Mom admitted finally. We thought we were protecting you, but we were really protecting ourselves. I'm sorry, Cassandra. And you, I turned to Dad, to Martin, the man I'd always called Dad, but who wasn't biologically mine. His eyes were filled with uncharacteristic tears. I've made many mistakes in my life, he said slowly. But the worst was letting you believe even for a moment that you were less important to me than Valerie. Biology doesn't make a father. I should have shown you that every day. It wasn't enough. Not nearly enough to make up for years of favoritism, of feeling like an outsider in my own family. But it was a start. I need some time, I said finally. Away from all of you. To figure out who I am, now that I know the truth. Where will you go? Mom asked anxiously. I have an apartment, remember, my own life that doesn't revolve around this family. Will you? Valerie hesitated. Will you ever forgive me? I looked at my half-sister, this person with whom I shared half my DNA, but who had betrayed me in ways I could barely comprehend. I don't know, I answered honestly. Right now I can barely stand to look at you. As I walked out the door for the second time in 2 days, I felt different. The shock and pain remained, but something else had taken root alongside them, a strange sense of liberation. The lies had been exposed. The truth, however painful, was finally in the open. 3 months have passed since that day. Valerie eventually told Richard the truth, and after much soul-searching they decided to try again, this time with complete honesty. They're not getting married yet, but Richard is fully committed to being a father to their child. Jason and I have spoken only once since everything came to light. He apologized again for the affair with Valerie, and I told him I forgave him, not for his sake, but for my own. Some wounds need closure to heal properly. My parents are trying in their way. Mom calls regularly, though I often let it go to voicemail. Dad Martin sent me a letter about his own father, about family bonds that transcend biology, about his regrets and hopes. It was more emotional honesty than he'd shown in my entire life. As for me, I've been researching my biological father. Daniel Reynolds is now the head of cardiac surgery at a prestigious hospital in Seattle. I haven't decided yet if I'll contact him. Some days I think he has a right to know he has a daughter. Other days I wonder if disrupting his life serves any purpose beyond my own curiosity. What I do know is that family is complicated, more complicated than the simple stories we tell ourselves about blood and loyalty and unconditional love. Sometimes the people who should love us the most hurt us the deepest. Sometimes the truth, however painful, is the only path to healing. And sometimes when a family built on lies finally crumbles, what rises from the ashes is something more authentic, more honest, and ultimately more whole. Wow, what a journey this has been to share with all of you. Thank you so much for staying with me through this entire story. If you've ever experienced family betrayal or discovered uncomfortable truths about your own family, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. How did you handle it? Did you find forgiveness, or are some bridges permanently burned? This experience taught me that sometimes the most painful revelations lead to the most important growth. If my story resonated with you in any way, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories about family dynamics, personal growth, and finding your own path. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in their family struggles. Thank you again for listening, for your support, and for being part of this healing journey with me. Remember, the truth might hurt, but living in lies hurts more in the long run. Until next time, take care of yourselves and the authentic relationships in your life.